Dear members and friends, Gya σας. My name is Liana Verzeas, President of the Hellenic Lyceum, Sídnεϊ, and we welcome you to the Hellenic Lyceum's commemoration of the 2500th anniversary of the battles of Thermopylae and Salamis. The Hellenic Lyceum is a women's organisation of 70 years standing in Australia, promoting Greek language, culture, folkloric dancing and traditions. And we are the custodians of the largest collection of authentic Greek costumes outside of Greece. As the 2500-year anniversary does not come around too often, and there are not many nations that can celebrate such an occasion, the Hellenic Lyceum Committee resolved, notwithstanding the COVID-19 restrictions, this show must go on. We had to adapt, of course, so what you see here is in lieu of the multimedia production which had been planned for the 17th of May 2020 under the auspices of the Greek Festival of Sídnεϊ. Now, it is not only the length of time that makes this anniversary so special, but these battles change the course of history, that is, their significance, not the heroic resistance, which is of course inspirational, nor the brilliant military strategy and victory at Salamis. The importance of these battles is, if they had gone the other way, the world we have today would be very different. Why? Because after the heroic defeat and self-sacrifice at Thermopylae, the Persians marched on to Athens and burnt it to the ground. The Persian Empire at that time was the grandest and most powerful ever to appear in history. All things being equal, the tiny, perpetually bickering little Greek states would have become another province of this mighty autocratic empire and follow whatever course the empire took. But, and it is enormous but, the unexpected Greek victory at Salamis changed everything. Xerxes left Greece with his navy in haste, and the following year his army, which was occupying central Greece all this time, was defeated at Plataea. The Athenians that had been evacuated just before the capture and burning of Athens returned to their city, and then the miraculous 50 years happened, known as the Golden Age of Athens, which moved mankind in a direction to our very day. The flowering of democracy, art, theatre, philosophy, the Parthenon, symbols of ecumenical civilization. None of this would have been possible if the Persians had been victorious at Salamis. So, this is indeed an incredible historical event, one that is being commemorated around the world. And we, as Greek Australians, makes us especially proud in participating in this special, once-in-a-lifetime celebration. We hope you enjoy the presentation. Now, I pass it over to Theodora Zourkas to provide the historical setting for us.
Thank you, Liana. As Liana just mentioned, we are commemorating a watershed in world history. Firstly, it is important that we acknowledge Herodotus, the father of history, for recording for posterity the events known as the Persian Wars. We will let Herodotus tell the story and start with a brief summary of the main historical events. The Persian Empire in 500 BC stretched from India to the Aegean Sea, in what today is Western Turkey. Back then, it was the Greek region of Ionia. In 499 BC, the Ionians revolted against the Persian overlordship and called on Athens for support. Athens sent help. However, the Ionian revolt was suppressed. Darius, the Persian king, decided to punish Athens for its brazen behaviour. In 490 BC, Darius sent a fleet across the Aegean, which landed at Marathon. To everyone's surprise, the Athenians inflicted a humiliating defeat on the Persians, forcing them to board their ships and depart, leaving over 6,000 Persians dead and a loss of only 192 Athenians. Darius was furious and planned a bigger expedition to punish the Athenians, but he died before he could implement this. His son, Xerxes, was now obliged to deal with the unfinished business. He mustered what is believed to have been the largest expeditionary force in history until that time. While Herodotus claims millions, which is clearly an exaggeration, historians agree that it could not have been less than 300,000 men. In May 480 BC, this huge army commenced its long march, reaching Thermopylae in August and having subdued everything in its path. There at Thermopylae, the Spartan king Leonidas, with his 300 men and 700 Thespians, held off the massive army for 3 days, until the traitor Ephialtes led the Persians through a mountain trail to get behind the Greeks. The heroic self-sacrifice of this small band of men has immortalized Leonidas and has resonated throughout the ages. There are many versions of Simonides' famous epitaph at their gravesite, which invokes the sacrifice and the honor of the fallen soldiers. I like the one, "Go tell the Spartans, passer-by, that here obedient to their laws we lie." The Persians moved on to Athens, which had been evacuated, and the city was torched, including the wooden temples on the Acropolis. He had now avenged his father Darius. Xerxes' triumph, however, was short-lived. Themistocles, the Athenian leader, tricked both Xerxes and some of the states that had provided ships into facing the Persian army in the strait between the island of Salamis and the Greek mainland. This prevented a much larger Persian fleet to maneuver, and it was easily defeated by the Greeks. Xerxes darted across the Aegean with the remainder of his navy so as not to be trapped in winter. He left a huge army behind under the leadership of Mardonius, which in turn was defeated at Plataea the following year. We would now like to present a short video clip of the Battle of Thermopylae. Please enjoy. I would now like to introduce you to Helen Dimas, who will host the next segment of our program.
Thank you, Theodora. We now have the pleasure of presenting Dr. Yvonne Inall of the Australian Archaeological Institute of Athens, AAIA, of Sydney University, who will speak about the weapons and dress that they wore at these battles. Dr. Yvonne Inall is an archaeologist whose research has been focused on Iron Age weaponry in the Mediterranean, Northwest Europe and Britain. She holds a PhD in history from the University of Hull, United Kingdom, and Master of Philosophy in Classical Archaeology from University of Sydney, where she is Project Officer at the AAIA.
My name is Yvonne Inall. I am an archaeologist based at the Australian Archaeological Institute at Athens at the University of Sydney. I would like to say thank you so much for inviting me to participate in your event, and thank you to the Hellenic Lyceum for the invitation, and particularly to Liana and Theodora for all of their fantastic work getting this event organised in such challenging times. I was asked to speak today about the battles of Thermopylae and Salamis, and particularly what archaeology can contribute to our understanding of these battles. These were critical battles in the Persian Wars of ancient Greek. This was a defining moment for the ancient Greek poleis. Poleis that ordinarily would fight against each other were compelled to band together against a common foe. And these two battles were critical in that contest. I wanted to start by looking at the hoplite equipment. This was what really enabled the hoplite warrior to withstand the Persian assault at Thermopylae for as long as they did, and really is critical to our understanding of ancient Greek warfare. So the equipment that the ancient hoplite would carry consisted of several items of equipment. We have here a fantastic picture of a reenactor wearing the full hoplite kit. Now, not every warrior would be able to afford all of this, and I've divided, you can see here, the essential and the optional extras. So essentially you had to have a shield, that was must have, and you needed a heavy thrusting spear. You also needed a helmet to protect your head, and a sword was got to have if you can get it. It was kind of borderline between the essential and optional extras. If you could afford additional equipment and you weren't equipped by the state, you had to fund your own equipment. So if you could afford that extra equipment, you would get a breastplate or cuirass. You would protect your legs with some greaves, and you would add some protection for your wrists. This was quite a lot of equipment to carry, and there's been substantial debate as to how much it all weighed. A lot of older debates said that it probably weighed in excess of 35 kilos, but more recent analysis and experimental archaeology has led people like Peter Krentz to suggest that it was actually much lighter, and probably around 14 to 21 kilos, depending on how much of the kit you had, which is actually less than soldiers carry in the field today. The critical piece of equipment and the great military innovation of hoplite warfare was the Argive shield. And this was a round, convex shield. It was about 90 centimetres in diameter, and it had this fantastically innovative arm grip system that would enable, it was a two-handle grip that would enable the weight of the shield to be carried primarily on the shoulder. These shields were fairly heavy, sort of around 6 to 7 kilos on average. They were made primarily of wood, and it was a very thin, a light, soft wood. There are very few examples that are preserved with their wood intact. We have lots of bronze laminates from sanctuary sites like Olympia, but very few preserve the wood. And where the wood has been preserved, it's been shown to be a softwood, poplar or willow, which is very good at absorbing the shock of spear blows. Experimental archaeology conducted at University College Dublin by de Groot also showed that the very thin bronze laminates, even though it's only about 0.5 millimetre thick, was really good at deflecting blows, and the convex shape of the shield really distributed the force of any blow across the surface of the shield in a very, very helpful and protective way. In addition to the heavy shield, you would carry a thrusting spear that would enable you to stand with your peers and deliver forceful blows. These featured an iron spearhead and a bronze counterpoint or sirota that would have enabled the spear to be held comfortably at this upward tilted angle. Swords would be either short cut and thrust swords or a slashing sword, and these really reflected the external influences of the Greeks, because the short cut and thrust swords tend to be very similar to those that were used in Italy, and the slashing swords are very close to those that were used in Turkey and the Levantine coasts and in Persia, actually. So with that, we turn to the Persian army and how they were equipped, where they were much more lightly armed on the whole compared to the Greeks. They did have the heavy armed immortals, but the majority of the Persian army were archers. They wore organic protective equipment, leather caps, textile clothing, and they carried leather or wicker shields. And because they were so reliant on the Persian archers, that you can see here a depiction from Darius's palace in Susa, that's dated a little bit before the Persian Wars, and you can see also some of the spearheads and arrowheads that have been recovered from Thermopylae. But because they were so reliant on archers, they also had shield bearers to protect them as they fired their shots. The effectiveness of Persian archery against hoplite warriors was very low. Chris Matthew conducted some experimental archaeology, and he showed that this hit rate for arrows against a fully armed hoplite warrior was about 3%. And in his experiments, none of the hits that he was able to record would have been fatal in reality had they been real warfare. And this goes a really long way to explaining how it was that around 8,000 Greek hoplites could hold off 80,000 or more Persian soldiers for over 2 days. Until their unfortunate envelopment on the third day that led to their demise. The decision to hold the pass, or attempt to hold the pass at Marathon, was actually critical to their efforts. They selected a landscape that they believed that they could hold, but archaeology has actually been very challenged to support Herodotus's statements of how the landscape looked and what role it played in the battle. But more recently, between 2004 and 2009, landscape archaeology has really stepped into the breach and helped us to answer these questions. Konstantinos Vivalidis and his colleagues from the Aristotle University at Thessaloniki and other institutions have worked together in a massive geomorphological survey of the pass, and they were able to identify the stratigraphy, how it changed across the site, and they were able to carbon date sea level changes at the site. So they were able to date the rise and fall of sea levels. And their results showed that the middle gate at Thermopylae was much as Herodotus described it. It was not so much a narrow pass as it was a very marshy area with little solid ground that was fed by the hot springs. So Vivalidis and his colleagues have demonstrated for the first time that Herodotus' description of the terrain is valid. And the shoreline in antiquity would have been roughly where the road lies now. Of course, they were unsuccessful, and the Persians went on to sack Athens. And from an archaeological perspective, while the sack of Athens has been quite terrible for the ancient Greeks, it's been brilliant for archaeologists, because there was a lot of tidying up after that destruction, and things like broken statues and architectural elements were all put into dumps that are very datable. We have a known destruction level, and we can date things before and after the Persian sack of Athens, to the point where this event is actually the horizon between what is considered archaic and classical Athens. So this is an archaeological outcome of the Persian Wars. So while the Persian sack of Athens has proved really illuminating for archaeology, the Battle of Salamis has been much more elusive. The battle is actually inextricably linked with the history of maritime archaeology in Greece. The first ever state-sanctioned maritime archaeological survey, conducted in 1884, was with the stated objective of locating the battle site and finding the wrecks of the Battle of Salamis. Unfortunately, the project was considered a failure at the time, And it's unfortunate because what they were doing was truly pioneering work in what was at that time a really nascent field of research. Even though they didn't find the ships at that time, the allure of Salamis has repeatedly drawn maritime archaeologists to the area. In 1923, the New York Times reported on an international team of Greek, Canadian and American divers who were going to mount an expedition with the stated aim of finding the sunken ships so that they could better understand the Greek trireme. While that has not really been particularly successful, maritime archaeology didn't find and still hasn't found any of the triremes. In 2016, the Effort of Underwater Activities in the Hellenic Ministry of Culture led a project that was largely funded by Honor Frost Foundation, which is continuing to go on, and they have actually found the harbour at Salamis, and associated pottery and coin finds demonstrate that this was the harbour that was in use at the time of the Persian Wars. In addition to the maritime archaeology that has been going on at Salamis, we also have spectacular experimental archaeology that has really helped us to understand how the ancient Greek triremes functioned. And what you have here is a photograph of the Olympias. This is a wholly reconstructed, built completely modern construction. It's owned and was built by the Hellenic Navy, and they still own it. And it was built in 1987, and underwent a number of sea trials in the late 80s and the early 90s, principally the early 90s. The conduct of these trials, and if you go on YouTube, you can see a number of videos of the early trials as they were being done. They had a very steep learning curve, and they learnt a tremendous amount about how ancient triremes would have functioned. And it turns out that you don't really row a trireme the way that people row today on rivers and in other boats that people would row today. It's a very, very impressive piece of equipment, and takes a lot of teamwork and training to work collectively. But it really demonstrates that experimental archaeology can answer questions about how ancient warfare was conducted, even when we haven't got the surviving ships themselves, based on the on the literary accounts and on the archaeological finds of non-military vessels. So this has been a very brief survey, and there's so much more to cover on this topic than we can get through in this very brief presentation. But I'd like to say thank you again for this opportunity to speak with you, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
A very big thank you to Dr. Inall for her enlightening and informative talk. As we have seen and heard, there were two battles. Thermopylae, the first battle, a heroic defeat, and the second, a glorious victory in the sea battle of Salamis. We will now present you with a video clip of the naval battle of Salamis. Please enjoy. And now I will hand you back to our President, Liana Vitsaias, who will briefly outline about the message of Thermopylae through the ages.
Leonidas and his soldiers' heroic act of self-sacrifice is arguably the most famous military last stand of all time and has reverberated throughout the ages. Battles fought to the last man are inevitably compared to Thermopylae, and in history there have been the Philippine Thermopylae, 1480-99, the Polish Thermopylae in 1939, Australia's Thermopylae in 1942, fought in New Guinea. The phrase Melon Lave was written on the Texan flag during the Mexican Wars. Thermopylae features in the national anthem of Colombia, the Polish War Cemetery, and the poems of Lord Byron, A. Houseman, Emily Dickinson, T.S. Eliot, Thomas Osborne Davis, and Cavafis, and in numerous novels in many languages, including by Stephen King, Mary Renault, and Frank Miller's tale of an aging Batman. Thermopylae has been a subject of a number of movies and referred to in many others, such as The Last Samurai, and in pop culture, such as South Park, Star Trek, Robot Chicken, and Xenia, Warrior Princess, and in many video games. However, Thermopylae has a special relevance in time and place for Greeks. Leonidas' Melon Lave, come and take it, was repeated by Constantine Palaiologos, the last Byzantine emperor, when he was defending Constantinople with 8,000 men against a besieging Turkish army of 150,000. His reply to the offer to hand over the city on generous terms for his personal safety was met by the following, which echoed Leonidas' words: "The city is not mine to surrender." And what of the Suliotises at Zalongo, when faced with the prospect of captivity? They jumped over the cliff to their deaths, taking the children with them. By a strange twist of fate, in 1821, during the Greek War of Independence, Athanasios Diakos defended the bridge of Alamana, a stone's throw from Thermopylae. On 28th of October 1940, the Greek Oshi to the invading fascists again echoed Leonidas' Melon Lave. And by the strangest of all ironies, there was a modern battle at Thermopylae at the same pass fought by Australians against invading Germans on the 25th of April. Yes, Anzac Day, in which 1941, in which the Anzacs destroyed 15 Nazi tanks. So, Thermopylae has a special place in world history, and more so in the psyche of all Greeks and of freedom-loving peoples of the world. We must not, however, overlook the importance of the Battle of Salamis. After all, Thermopylae may have been a heroic defeat, but nevertheless a defeat. Without Salamis, which was a decisive victory, there would not have been the golden age of Athens, with all those brilliant philosophers, dramatists, scientists, architects, sculptors, and the flowering of democracy, and the basic concepts of freedom of thought and action. Salamis is thus one of the most significant battles in human history. A Persian victory and domination of Greece would have radically changed the whole trajectory of mankind. To honour this major event in the history of Europe, Salamis has been elected to be the cultural capital of Europe in 2021. We also support the date of the battle, the birthday of Europe. The Hellenic Lyceum hopes you have enjoyed our production, and we look forward to seeing you soon at our forthcoming events. Stay well and thank you.